It was a little bit of a rough week for college prospects across the nation. What's up, everybody? Good morning. We are here on Wednesday, and you guys know what that means. We're going to be taking a look at some of the intriguing draft prospects across the nation in college football. Just taking a look at how they performed the most recent week, who stood out positively. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this right off the bat. This week was pretty weak. So weak, in fact, I had a very hard time coming up with a full selection of players in almost every position. There were only a couple of positions that impressed me this week. So we're going to get through this much quicker than usual. We're going to be doing the offense in this video. And as you can see, we've only got 3 quarterbacks and 3 receivers. We almost always have 5. So a lot of the top guys were on bye. Some of the top guys didn't play particularly well. And you get here, you got 3 tight ends. Usually I get to about 5. I got 2 left guards. It's rough. And obviously, it was just kind of a one-week thing that resulted from some teams being on a bye week and some players just not performing. But I think maybe bigger than that is that this draft class just is not that good outside of... I still think receiver's good, cornerback, and probably defensive line, and edge rusher. So I do think that is a thing that is happening here. But of course, it's a bad week. The 3 quarterbacks, I got Cam Ward. He played a really good game against, I think it was Duke. 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. Didn't do anything with his legs. The interception was really bad, though, and he's got to stop doing that. He's got to stop the across his body, back to the middle of the field stuff. He did it against Cal, and now he's done it against Duke. Can't happen. That's something that he should be able to get out of his game over the next year or so as he makes his way to the NFL. He lost a fumble as well, so 2 turnovers, but still a very good game for Cam Ward, 79.4. Jackson Dart produced big time, 500 yards passing, almost 50 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns, 25 of 31. So he lit up. I think they played Arkansas, if I recall, but I still look at him and I see a guy who's not, he doesn't have what it takes to cut it in the NFL. This is a guy who is probably a backup level player in this league because he just doesn't have the arm and he benefits tremendously from the system. And this last guy I want to spend a second on here because he's new and we haven't really been talking about him at all, but could this guy be the savior? Curtis Rourke of Indiana. Hoosiers are undefeated, and I think there's a sense that they're not necessarily winning because of their quarterback, but that was also the sense about somebody like a J.J. McCarthy, and he eventually ascended to the top 10 in the draft. Now, Indiana is not as good as Michigan last year, and I don't think Rourke is as good as McCarthy, but it does seem like there might be something going on here with Curtis Rourke that we as diligent draft observers need to at least take a look at here. He played good this week for Indiana, 19 of 29 for 263 and 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, really good PFF grade. He's played a couple games that are probably better than that this year. Unfortunately, I didn't even get to watch him when Washington played Indiana because he was out. So I can't even speak from like firsthand. I watched every snap he played in this game, and this is what I think. But I'm starting to look a little bit more into Curtis Rourke, and there's some stuff there. I'm not saying I think he'll be a first rounder or that he deserves to be a first rounder, but there's some stuff with Curtis Rourke that seems at least somewhat NFL caliber. And maybe that just means he ends up in like the 4th round or even 3rd round, but you could find your next quarterback in that range if it's the right guy. And maybe Curtis Rourke becomes that guy. And maybe in this QB draft, he goes way higher than people anticipate. So what do you guys think of Curtis Rourke? I think that's probably the most interesting thing we can be talking about right now as Seahawks fans when it comes to the quarterback position because it's so bad this year. I really, really do not like this class, but a guy like Rourke coming out of nowhere and ascending would really help. Wide receivers, again, I could only find 3. It was just a weak set. Ayo Manora of Stanford made it again, and he only had 4 catches. He just went for 188 yards and a touchdown, so big plays, 6 targets, 90.3 PFF. Xavier Restrepo, who I think broke the program record in Miami for receiving yards in a season. 8 catches, 12 targets, 146 yards, 3 touchdowns. So you get in the end zone 3 times, you're probably getting credit from me. 82.7. And Jaden Higgins, 10 catches on 16 targets. So actually, that's less efficient than he's used to. Iowa State actually lost this game, by the way, so they were in a bit of a dogfight. But 149 yards and a touchdown is usually going to get it done as a receiver in this game. So definitely making his move, definitely getting some respect and credit from draft guys as somebody who maybe belongs in the NFL, 83.6 PFF. I like him. Tight ends, again, we're going to blow through this quickly because I could only find 3 guys that stood out in any way. Loveland, and remember, Loveland does not have a real quarterback right now. Like, Loveland legitimately doesn't even have like a Jake Hayner. They basically do not have a real passing attack, it feels like, because their quarterback is so substandard. But 7 catches for 112 yards with that situation. I know Michigan was down the whole game. I get that. Still, ice cold production. He also had a rush for negative 2 yards for whatever that's worth, 77.2 PFF. Tyler Warren has kind of become tight end 2 in this class, according to a lot of people. 4 catches on 5 targets for 47 yards, and he ran the ball 3 times for 47 yards. So he almost had 100 yards from scrimmage for Penn State on the day, which was one of their best players on offense for sure, 70.6. So maybe there's some like H-back potential with a guy like a Tyler Warren too. But I do like him. I don't love him necessarily, but he's a pretty good tight end. And then you've got the Wyoming guy, John Michael Gillenborg. He had 4 catches, 5 targets, 38 yards and a touchdown, 89.2 PFF grade. By the way, PFF actually said he had, I think, 5 catches for 47 yards. I don't know why there's a discrepancy, but either way, it's still not a huge day, right? We're not looking at that and we're like really, really excited, but it's the best I could do after the week we just had, where even the modest tight end group that we had just didn't show up. Okay, offensive line was okay this week, actually. That's better than the other positions compared to the typical. Clay Webb, standout left guard for the Jack State, small school, but didn't allow any pressures, and Jack State ran for over 360 yards, 7.6 yards per carry, 63.7 on the PFF, which isn't very high, admittedly, but I don't know what else he needs to do to be given credit for a good game, right? If you didn't allow any QB pressures and your team ran the ball this well, you probably did good if you're the offensive lineman. Welcome back, Tate Ratledge for Georgia. He finally came back this week, played a pretty good game. No pressures allowed. Georgia ran the ball okay, not great, but that's kind of been their modus operandi all season, with or without Tate Ratledge. They don't run the ball like they used to. 68.2. He continues to be a guy that I really like, even though he'd have to be making the move from right guard to left guard. All right, center's not too bad this week. You got Jonah Monheim of USC. He allowed 1 pressure. USC ran the ball well against Washington, over 5.5 yards a carry, 166 yards, and 66.9 PFF grade. He's becoming one of the top centers in this draft, I think. You got the Georgia center, who is currently a late day 3 guy for most people, but he's playing pretty well. UGA, Jared Wilson, 0 pressures. Ran the ball for about 150 yards, 4.4 yards a carry. It's okay, not dominant, but 77.8 grade for him. And Logan Jones, the Iowa center. We got to start talking about him a little bit more, I think. He's one of these road grader centers that seem to always at least have somewhat successful NFL careers. 2 pressures allowed, which usually would be a big problem, but Iowa ran the ball for 330 yards, so I'm going to be willing to overlook that a little bit. Over 6 yards a carry, 76.6. The guy is good. I don't know if he's necessarily an exact fit for what we want to do, but he can play some football. All right, let's take it home with the right tackles here. I found a few that I like this week. You got Blake Miller of Clemson. Clemson did suffer a bad loss, but Blake Miller allowed 1 pressure the whole game, 222 rushing yards by Clemson, almost 5 yards a carry, 68.8 PFF grade, good game. Micah Pettis of Ole Miss. Ole Miss obviously put up a ton of points on, I believe it was Arkansas, and Pettis was part of that. No pressures allowed. Ole Miss didn't really run the ball well, but that's not really what Ole Miss does anyway. 132 yards, 3.1 yards a carry, 75.3 PFF grade. It's respectable. And late round sleeper at right tackle here would be Jack Nelson of Wisconsin. He did allow 1 pressure, and Wisconsin did only have 124 rushing yards, but that's mostly because they fell behind so quickly they had to abandon the run. So I think the fact that Jack Nelson is in this situation where his team is getting killed and he still manages an 81.8 and only 1 pressure allowed at the right tackle spot is quite impressive. So he's becoming a late round guy for me. And that's it. That's all I got. So I got to we got 10 minutes on offensive guys. It was not a good week, and it furthers my suspicion that this is not a very good draft class. All right. Next week is a week to prove that wrong, though. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Another video with the defense coming in a couple hours, and then we move on to other Seahawks adjacent topics.